Maria woke before the sun each morning. The hush of the small apartment stirred her senses, her mother's soft breathing in the next room, the faint hum of the old refrigerator, and the distant rumble of buses on the street below. She slipped on her worn slippers and padded into the cramped kitchen. There sat her mother at the rickety table, clutching a steaming cup of tea. Even in the dim light, Maria could see the lines of worry on her mother's face. Illness had come slowly, stealing her strength day by day, and now each breath seemed a victory. Maria poured herself a cup of tea too, careful not to spill a drop. She watched her mother bring the cup to her lips, hands trembling slightly. Across from them sat 8-year-old Leo, Maria's little brother. He stirred his cereal with concentration, his dark eyes bright with hope that breakfast would taste better than yesterday. Maria offered him a gentle smile, but he looked away shyly. He was used to her smiles, though, and he knew she tried to keep their small world warm. After breakfast, Maria kissed her mother's cheek. The warmth under her hand told her that fever had not taken over completely. That was a relief, but she felt the weight of worry settle again. She crouched beside Leo and ruffled his hair. "Be good for Mrs. Patel next door," she whispered. "I'll bring you home something nice after work." His face lit up. Mrs. Patel looked after him when Maria was away, but Maria felt guilty leaving him for long hours. Still, she worked 12-hour shifts to pay rent and buy the medicine that kept her mother alive. At 6 o'clock, Maria locked the apartment door and hurried down the narrow hallway. The staircase creaked under her steps as she reached the street. The first pale rays of dawn painted the sky in soft pinks and blues. She drew in a breath of cool air, bracing herself for another day at the diner. The corner diner was a small place, but familiar. Its neon sign flickered, casting a soft glow on the sidewalk. When she arrived, the diner was quiet, save for the clatter of pots in the kitchen and the hiss of steam from the coffee machine. Maria tied her apron with practiced fingers. The fabric had faded from too many washings, but she wore it with pride. She straightened the chairs and wiped down the counters until they gleamed. Then she arranged fresh napkins and menus at each tabletop. By the time the first customer wandered in, Maria was ready. She greeted him with a warm, "Good morning, sir," and took his order. She knew the regulars by heart, the retired teacher, who always asked for extra cream in her coffee, the truck driver who wanted oatmeal and an egg, and Mrs. Johnson, who came in strictly at 8 for her scrambled eggs and toast. As the morning rush arrived, Maria moved swiftly between tables. She balanced plates on her forearms, wiped up spilled coffee, and refilled cups without missing a beat. Her arms ached, but she welcomed the work. It gave her purpose and kept her mind busy, pushing aside worries about her family. When the bell above the door jingled, she turned with a smile, ready to welcome the next customer. In the back, her friend and fellow waitress Tina handed her a plate. "Here you go, Maria," Tina said. Tina had been working at the diner for 5 years. She knew Maria's story, how she cared for her mother and Leo on her own. Tina offered comfort when Maria felt overwhelmed. "Don't work too hard," Tina warned gently. Maria laughed softly. "If I stop, who will keep this place running?" She set the plate down at the counter and slipped quickly back into the dining room. By mid-morning, the diner was full. Cars lined up outside and the kitchen staff bustled behind the counter. Maria carried a plate of pancakes through the narrow aisle. She balanced them carefully, remembering the mornings when her mother's kitchen smelled of pancakes. Now, sweet smells were a distant memory. But this small diner gave her a chance to share warmth with strangers, to remind them of home. One bite of pancake or a sip of coffee could brighten someone's day. In that moment, Maria felt a spark of pride. Yet change was in the air. Just the day before, a representative from a large chain had walked in. He wore a crisp suit and polished shoes. He introduced himself as the district manager and spoke in measured tones about updates and new policies. Maria listened as he described new uniforms, fresh menus, and strict rules. She watched him hand out a glossy booklet with printed instructions. Her heart sank. The diner she loved was no longer just a place of honest work and friendly faces. It would soon become part of a bigger system, one where compassion could be lost in the fine print. That afternoon, Maria had a moment to catch her breath. She sat by the window, resting her back against the wall. Sunlight streamed in, painting golden stripes on the floor. She closed her eyes for a moment and pictured her mother smiling at her, as strong as she remembered before illness took hold. She pictured Leo laughing barefoot in the yard, chasing butterflies. Those images reminded her why she endured. Would not let her family down. The door jingled, and a man in a suit entered. Maria recognized him as the new district manager. He scanned the room and approached her table. Maria stood, smoothing her apron. He cleared his throat. "Maria," he said, "I need to speak with you about the policy changes. Please come to the office after your shift." Maria nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She wiped her hands on her apron, tried to calm her racing heart, and returned to her duties. When her shift finally ended, Maria was bone-tired. She clocked out and changed out of her apron. The district manager waited by the office door, clipboard in hand. Maria stepped inside and closed the door gently behind her. He pointed to the booklet he had handed out earlier. "Everything is in here," he said. "Free meals are no longer allowed. All orders must be paid in full. You must follow these rules exactly. No exceptions." Maria's chest tightened. "But what if someone really needs help?" she asked softly. The manager looked at her with firm eyes. "I understand your concern," he said, "but company policy is strict. You must follow it. Is that clear?" She nodded, though her heart felt heavy. She left the office and stepped out under the cool night sky. A fine drizzle began to fall, dotted by the diner's neon glow. She walked to the bus stop, head bowed, replaying the manager's words in her mind. At the bus stop, Maria pulled her coat tight around her. The wind whispered through the empty street. She felt lost for a moment, unsure how to navigate a world where kindness came with boundaries. But then she thought of her family waiting at home. She must stay strong. She must find a way to care for them, even if the world tried to put rules on compassion. When the bus arrived, Maria climbed on, paid her fare, and found a seat by the window. As the bus rumbled away, she watched the diner's neon sign recede into the distance. She promised herself that she would keep working hard, keep dreaming of brighter mornings, and keep love alive in her heart. Because no rule could erase the warmth she carried inside. ChatGPT said. A quiet hush fell over the diner as late afternoon sunlight slipped through the windows in golden beams. Maria moved between tables, stacking empty plates and wiping crumbs into her apron pocket. She felt the familiar ache in her legs and shoulders, but she told herself it was a good ache, a sign she worked hard to support her family. She glanced at the clock on the wall. It read 4:45. Her shift would end soon. After that, she planned to stop by the pharmacy for her mother's medicine and then hurry home before Leo's bedtime. Just as Maria set a coffee cup back on its saucer, the diner door opened with a gentle chime. Maria looked up. A small boy, no more than 7 or 8 years old, stepped inside. His clothes were too large around his arms and too short at his ankles. His shoes were worn thin at the toes, and one shoelace was missing. His hair was cut unevenly, and a faint smudge of dirt traced the curve of his cheek. He paused at the threshold, gripping the doorframe with a shaking hand. He looked around as if hoping to find something familiar, but all he saw were empty chairs and strangers. Maria noticed him instantly. She remembered herself at that age, hungry, scared, and alone. She knelt beside his empty table, offering him a gentle smile. "Hello there," she said softly. "Would you like something to eat?" The boy's shoulders rose in a small, uncertain shrug. He hesitated, eyes flicking down to the laminated menu on the table. His mouth opened and closed once, twice, but no words came out. "Nothing?" Maria asked, her voice kind. She reached out and patted the table. "It's okay. You can sit here if you like." The boy's eyes glistened with relief. He took a small step forward and sat on the cold vinyl seat. Maria rose and returned to the counter. She felt a tug in her heart as she reached for a plate. She thought of her small brother, waiting at Mrs. Patel's house. Leo would never dare to wander off like this boy, but hunger could make a child do strange things. Behind the kitchen's swinging doors, Maria found a stack of fresh plates. She chose the reddest one, the one that made pancakes shine like sunshine. Quickly, she filled it with 2 fluffy pancakes, drizzled syrup in zigzag lines, and placed a pat of butter on top so it would melt like a golden puddle. Then she added scrambled eggs, cooked soft and light, and 2 strips of bacon. Finally, she stacked slices of warm bread in a little basket. She carried the tray carefully through the diner, avoiding the seats that held cups and silverware. When she reached the boy's table, she set the plate down with a gentle clatter. The boy looked at the feast as if he saw a miracle. His eyes widened, and when he frowned, she gently reached over and brushed a lock of hair from his forehead. "It's on me," Maria whispered. "Just for today. Enjoy." The boy swallowed hard. Then, as if he found his voice in that moment, he whispered, "Thank you." His voice was soft, but Maria heard it. She nodded and stepped back to give him space. He picked up his fork and cut into a pancake. When he lifted it to his lips, his face brightened as if the sun broke through a cloud. He chewed slowly, savoring each bite. He took the second pancake, and then the eggs. He wiped his mouth on the napkin and took a sip of the coffee, though the coffee was too strong for him. He sipped it as if it were sweet juice. Maria watched, her heart warm and heavy at the same time. Behind the counter, Tina caught Maria's eye. Her eyebrows lifted in surprise as she saw the empty tray beside the boy's booth. Maria shook her head ever so slightly. Tina understood. She looked toward the back office door where a dark-suited man stood watching the scene. Maria turned and saw him clearly for the first time. It was the district manager, the same man who handed out the new policy booklet this morning. He watched with a tight expression, shoulders squared and arms folded. His eyes narrowed as he saw the boy eat without paying. Maria felt a flash of fear. She swallowed, pressing her lips together. She had broken the rules, but she could not in good conscience let a hungry child go hungry. The boy finished the last of his pancakes and looked up at Maria, a faint hope in his eyes suggesting he might get more. Maria forced herself to smile and said, "That was good, wasn't it?" The boy nodded shyly and smiled back, his grin revealing missing front teeth. Maria's heart soared at his joy, but her relief was short-lived. The district manager cleared his throat. Maria turned. His face was stern, and he gestured toward her with a single finger. Maria felt a cold knot twist in her stomach. She took a deep breath and approached him. Her apron felt heavy around her waist, as though it carried the weight of every rule she had ever learned. He spoke in a low voice that still carried across the quiet diner. "Maria," he said, "my office now," pointed toward the back door that led to the office. Maria glanced at the boy. He watched her with wide eyes, half afraid she would disappear. Maria smiled softly at him and whispered, "Be good, okay?" He nodded. Maria stepped through the swinging door, leaving behind the scent of syrup and bacon. The district manager closed the door behind her. The office was small and bare. Simple desks sat between them, and behind the desk a nameplate read District Manager. The pages of the policy booklet were spread open across the desk, words typed in cold, black letters. Maria's eyes drifted to the phrase, "No free meals under any circumstances." A line beneath it read, "Strict adherence required." The district manager leaned forward, placing both hands on the desk. "You served that child without payment," he said. His voice was calm, but Maria heard the hard edge beneath. "Hindu. You know company policy?" Maria's throat tightened. She nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "I do." His eyes bored into hers. "Why did you break it?" Maria swallowed hard. She closed her eyes for a moment and thought of her own childhood, of nights with no dinner, of waking up to an empty kitchen. She thought of Leo, tucked in at Mrs. Patel's, waiting for her. She thought of her mother, fighting for breath in their small apartment. All of that gave her courage. She opened her eyes and met his gaze. "Because he was hungry," she said softly. "He needed food." The district manager's lips pressed into a thin line. "This policy exists for a reason," he said. "We cannot set a precedent." Maria felt frustration rise, but she kept her voice calm. Sometimes rules need mercy, she said. Sometimes kindness matters more than policy. The district manager shook his head. I understand your heart is in the right place, he said, but policy is policy. You must follow it. He paused and looked down at the open booklet. Maria's heart pounded. She felt tears warm her eyes, but she blinked them away. She nodded slowly. I understand, she said. I'm sorry. The district manager closed the booklet and slid it toward her. I'm sorry too, he said, but I have to let you go. Maria's chest tightened so sharply she thought she might not breathe. You're fired, he said. Please gather your things and leave. Your final paycheck will be mailed to you. Maria shook her head. Please, she whispered. I need this job. The district manager looked at her with quiet finality. I'm sorry, that's all. Maria looked at the desk, at the booklet, at the man who had taken the warmth from the diner. She felt a tear slip down her cheek. She wiped it away with a shaking hand. Thank you for everything, she said in a small voice. I'll go now. She turned and opened the door. The swinging door buzzed softly as she stepped back into the diner. The boy was gone. In his place sat an empty plate, wiped clean. Of every crumb? Maria walked slowly to her station and hung up her apron. The diner was silent. Chairs were pushed in, tables cleared. Only the neon sign hummed at the window, casting its glow on the empty floor. She picked up her bag and walked toward the exit. The district manager watched from the office with arms folded. He said nothing as she passed. As Maria stepped out into the street, a cool breeze brushed her face. She closed her eyes and inhaled, tasting the freedom and the weight of uncertainty. She did not look back at the diner. She held her head high, though her heart trembled. She walked down the sidewalk, boots clicking on the pavement. Streetlights flickered on overhead, glowing like distant stars. She thought of home, of her mother waiting for her medicine, of Leo waiting for her smile. They needed her. That thought gave her strength. She would find another way to care for them. She would not let rules stop her from showing kindness. Though this door had closed, she believed another would open. As Maria walked on, the neon glow faded behind her. Ahead lay darkness and unknown paths, but she carried a small light inside a light that came from compassion and hope. No matter what came next, she vowed to keep that light alive. Maria walked the long block home under a sky that had turned from dark gray to ink black. Her legs felt heavy, each step like wading through water. The street lamps cast pools of yellow light on the wet pavement.
Ow.
The wind tugged at her thin coat, and tugged at her spirits too. Maria felt as though the world had shifted beneath her feet. 1 minute she had a place to go each morning, an apron to tie, and a steady paycheck in her pocket. The next, she had nothing but the cold air and the echo of the district manager's words still ringing in her ears. She reached the bus stop and shivered as she waited for the last bus of the night. The driver's face looked tired when she climbed aboard. She dropped a few coins into the fare box and found a seat near the back. She wrapped her arms around herself and stared out the window as the bus rolled through silent streets. Of her mother lying in the small bed in their one-room apartment, of Leo fast asleep at Mrs. Patel's, and of the medicine bottle that she still needed to pick up. Without her job, the rent and the medicine would go unpaid. Mother's health would suffer. Her brother would feel the strain of her absence. The weight of responsibility pressed on Maria's heart like a heavy stone. When the bus stopped in front of her apartment building, Maria climbed down and hurried up the stairs. The building smelled of damp paint and old carpet. The hallway was cramped, the walls streaked with patches of water damage. She fumbled with her keys and pushed the door open. Inside, the apartment was dark and still. She flipped on the light switch, and the single bare bulb cast sharp shadows in every corner. She set her bag on the table and walked to her mother's bed. Her mother lay under a thin blanket, her face pale in the harsh light. A single hand rested on the quilt, her fingers curled against the fabric. The rhythm of her breathing was shallow but steady. Maria sat on the edge of the bed and brushed a strand of hair from her mother's forehead. "Mama," she whispered. Her mother's eyes fluttered open. She gave a small, tired smile. "You're home," she said. Her voice was soft, like the rustle of dry leaves. Maria nodded and fought back tears. "How was work?" her mother asked in a weak voice. Maria closed her eyes. She did not know how to answer. She swallowed hard. "I don't work there anymore." Her mother's brow creased with worry. "What do you mean?" she asked. Maria took a breath. She told her mother the story again, how the district manager had watched her give a free meal to a hungry boy, how he had sent her to the office, how the policy forbade mercy, how she had been fired on the spot. Her mother listened in silence, her eyes growing wider at each detail. When Maria finished, she glanced at the empty medicine bottle on the table. Her mother's face fell. "The pharmacy closes in an hour," she said. Maria's heart ached. She had no job and no money. She had been counting on her final paycheck to pay for the medicine. Now it would arrive too late. She felt panic rise in her chest. She searched her mind for a solution, any solution, but found nothing. She took her mother's hand in hers. It was cold, and Maria squeezed it tightly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I will find a way." Maria stood and crossed to the other side of the room. She needed air, space to think. She looked at the small table piled high with bills and unopened letters. The rent notice stared up at her in bold red type. The electricity bill lay next to it, threatening to disconnect their power if not paid in a week. She sank into the only chair in the room and buried her face in her hands. The tears came then, hot and silent. She did not know how to stop them. After a moment, she wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. She could not stay here weeping. She had a family to protect. She thought of Leo safe with Mrs. Patel for now, but soon he would come home and wonder why she was not there. She needed to make a plan. She stood, brushed the tears away, and took a deep breath. She would not give up. Not for her brother, not for her mother, and not for herself. First, she decided she would visit the agency down the street that helped people find work. It was late, but they might have an after-hours drop box. She walked to the front door and opened it, stepping out into the cool night once more. She locked the door behind her and hurried downstairs. She slipped the rent notice under her coat and tucked the electric bill into her bag, and she walked briskly to the community center at the corner. The building was old, its brick walls chipped and worn by years of rain and sun. A small sign beside the door read, "Community Resource Center." The door had a slot for forms and applications after hours. Maria pulled a blank resume from her bag and placed it in an envelope. On the front, she wrote her name and phone number. She slipped the envelope into the slot and pressed her hand against the cold metal door. "Please, let someone call," she murmured. Next, she walked back toward the pharmacy. The neon sign glowed blue against the dark sky. She stood beneath it for a moment, thinking of what to say. She stepped inside, the bell above the door tingling softly. A tired clerk looked up from behind the counter. Maria's throat was dry. She swallowed and spoke in a quiet voice. "I'm sorry to bother you. I'm afraid I can't pay for my mother's medicine right now." She held out the empty bottle. The clerk hesitated. He scanned the label, looked at Maria's face, and then pushed a small packet across the counter. "Here," he said quietly. "Take this. We can sort out payment later." Maria's eyes widened. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick. The clerk nodded. "Just come back tomorrow," he said. Relief flooded through Maria's chest, like the first warm rays of sun after a storm. "Thank you," she repeated. She clutched the bag with the medicine and hurried out into the night. She felt hope flicker again, fragile but real. On her way home, she stopped by Mrs. Patel's house to pick up Leo. The lantern outside glowed. Softly in the dark, Mrs. Patel opened the door and greeted Maria with a warm smile. Leo ran into Maria's arms, his arms wrapped tightly around her waist. "Did you have a good day?" Maria asked, gently lifting him up. He nodded and smiled. "Can we have pancakes tomorrow?" he asked. Maria's heart warmed. "Of course," she said. "We'll have pancakes." That night, Maria tucked her mother into bed and kissed her forehead. She checked the windows were locked and the heater was on. She whispered good night to her brother in the next room. Then she lay on her own thin mattress and stared at the ceiling. Her mind buzzed with possibilities. The world had closed one door, but other doors might open. She thought of the agency application, of the kindness of the pharmacy clerk, and of the laughter of her brother. She felt a spark of courage deep inside. Before sleep came, she made a promise to herself. She would keep looking for work, would keep caring for her family. She would show kindness whenever she could, even if it meant bending the rules. And she would believe that one day soon, someone would reward her compassion just as she had rewarded the hungry boy. With that thought, she closed her eyes and let herself drift into dreams of brighter mornings. Late the next morning, the diner stood quiet under a gray sky. The neon sign flickered, but inside, the stools at the counter were still empty. Maria slung her bag over her shoulder and walked past the glass doors. She paused at the curb, listening. To the distant honk of a bus? Her heart beat faster as she remembered the moment she had walked away for the last time. The memory of the district manager's cold eyes haunted her still. Unseen by Maria, the new CEO, Claire Dawson, stepped out of a car parked down the street. Claire wore casual clothes, 2-day jeans, and a denim jacket, so she looked like any passerby. She held an ordinary paper coffee cup in one hand. Her eyes scanned the diner's front window, where a small sign read, "Now hiring." Claire sipped from her cup and tucked a lock of hair behind her ear. She had watched Maria's kindness on security cameras and felt a swell of respect. Claire believed a company should reward empathy, not punish it. Claire crossed the street and climbed the diner's steps. The bell above the door jingled softly as she entered. The inside smelled of fresh coffee and frying bacon. Claire moved toward the back, where the kitchen staff was setting up for the day. The district manager stood with his clipboard, barking orders about schedules and uniforms. Claire walked past him, pretending to look at the menu board. When the manager glanced her way, she gave him a gentle nod and a friendly smile. He returned the nod, unaware she was the CEO. Claire's eyes found the small office door at the back of the diner. She slipped inside unannounced. Papers lay scattered across the desk, and the manager's coffee sat half empty. Claire walked quietly past the desk to a small monitor on the wall. The screen scrolled through yesterday's security footage. There, in the grainy black and white image, she saw Maria kneel beside the boy's table, the boy's eyes shining as he ate. She saw Maria carry the tray through the diner, and she saw the manager's reaction, his frown, his raised finger, Maria's nervous face. The office door closing behind them, Claire tapped a button and paused the footage. She watched Maria's fingers brush a lock of hair from the boy's forehead. She saw Maria's warm smile. Claire's chest filled with admiration. She knew that compassion was the heartbeat of any community. She would not let one rule break a good person. She flipped through more footage, watching the boy finish his meal. The empty plate left behind, Maria's cleanup after the diner closed. Claire felt a spark of hope. This was the kind of person she wanted on her team. Claire rose from her chair and walked out of the office. She passed through the busy kitchen, where cooks flipped eggs and sizzled sausages. She pressed a small button on her coat. A voice came through a hidden earbud. "I'm here," she whispered. "Please prepare my car. I'll need transport in 10 minutes. And text me in 1 hour to confirm I spoke with her." A second voice replied, "Understood." Claire left the diner quietly and walked down the street. She found Maria at the bus stop, her back to the diner's sign. Maria looked cold in her thin coat and thin scarf. She hugged her arms to her chest as she waited. Claire stepped up beside her and offered a warm smile. "Excuse me," she said. Softly, Maria jumped. Startled, Claire showed her ID. "I'm Claire Dawson, CEO of Sunrise Diner Group." Maria's eyes widened. "I heard about what happened yesterday," Claire continued, "and I wanted to meet you." Maria shook her head. "I'm sorry," she began. "I don't know what to say." Claire held up her hand. "No apologies," she said. "You did something brave. You showed compassion when rules said otherwise. That takes courage." Maria's eyes filled with tears. She glanced away, too overwhelmed to speak. Claire waited a moment, then said, "I want to offer you a job. I want you to become our assistant manager here. You'll have a regular salary, benefits, and full support. More than that, I want you to help me shape policies so that acts of kindness are valued, not punished." Maria stared at Claire. She swallowed hard. "But I lost my job yesterday." Claire shook her head. "Not anymore. I'm your new boss now." She reached into her pocket and pulled out an envelope. "Inside is your new contract. It starts today." Maria hesitated, then took the envelope with shaky fingers. She peeked inside and saw her name on the dotted line. She blinked, her tears spilling over. Claire smiled warmly. "Come on," she said. "Let's go inside and get you started." They walked back toward the diner. Maria's steps were tentative, as though she could scarcely believe what was happening. They passed through the kitchen, where the staff nodded in recognition. Word had spread already. Whispers and smiles followed them as they reached the diner floor. Claire led Maria to the empty office at the back. "This will be yours," Claire said, opening the door. The room was small, but bright, with a window that looked out over the dining area. Claire set the envelope on the desk and motioned for Maria to sit. "I want you to help me here," Claire said, settling into a chair across from her. "You have the kind of heart we need in leadership." Maria felt warmth spread through her chest. She sat down and looked at Claire, who began to explain. Over the next hour, Claire and Maria spoke quietly in the office. Claire outlined the new vision for the diner chain, one where rules existed to guide kindness, not to choke it. She asked Maria to share ideas on how to help hungry customers without breaking policies. Maria offered suggestions like a plate of simple soup kept behind the counter for those in need, a sign that read, "Ask for help if you need it," and a partnership with a local shelter to provide meals. Claire listened closely and took notes. She asked questions, encouraged Maria to speak freely, and praised each idea. To Maria, it felt like the first time someone truly valued her opinions. She spoke with confidence and passion. She described the joy in the boy's eyes, the fear she had felt when breaking the rules, and the relief she hoped to bring to others. By the time Claire tucked away her notebook, the gray sky outside had turned bright. The neon sign buzzed at the window, but the diner felt alive with promise. Claire reached across the desk and shook Maria's hand firmly. "Welcome aboard," she said. "We're going to do good work together." Maria's cheeks flushed with happiness. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." Claire stood and offered her hand. Maria rose, clutching the contract. She walked back through the kitchen and out to the dining floor, where the first lunch customers were beginning to arrive. She took a deep breath and looked around at the empty tables. A new kind of hope filled her heart. That afternoon, Claire stayed to observe. She watched as Maria greeted customers by name, filled orders promptly, and shared a kind word with a regular who looked tired. Claire saw Maria's compassion shine through every small gesture. When a stray cat wandered to the back door, meowing softly for food, Maria knelt in the doorway and gave it a saucer of milk. Claire smiled. This was exactly the empathy she had wanted to bring back. At the end of the day, Claire and Maria stood outside the diner. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Claire turned to Maria. "How do you feel?" she asked. Maria closed her eyes and inhaled the warm evening air. "I feel safe," she said, "and hopeful." Claire nodded. "Good," she replied. "Together, we'll make sure this place is more than just a restaurant. We'll make it a home for everyone who comes through the doors." Maria looked at the neon sign, then back at Claire. She felt gratitude she could not fully express. Above all, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She turned to walk home, eager to tell her mother and Leo that everything was going to be all right. With Claire's support, Maria knew she could care for her family and bring kindness to countless others, even under the brightest lights of company policy. And so she walked toward the setting sun, her steps light and her heart full of promise. The early morning air was cool and crisp when Maria stepped onto the sidewalk. The neon sign of the diner glowed softly behind her, welcoming the day. In her crisp new uniform and polished shoes, she felt both proud and determined. Today was her first official day as assistant manager. She adjusted the name tag clip to her apron, Maria, and took a deep breath. the world felt full of promise. Inside, the diner hummed with activity. Claire Dawson, the CEO, stood behind the counter, chatting easily with the cooks. Spotted Maria and waved her over. Maria returned the wave with a warm smile. As she crossed the floor, regular customers greeted her by name. The retired teacher asked after her mother's health. The truck driver teased her about sleeping in. Too late. Mrs. Johnson winked and said, "Nice to see you back in charge." Maria laughed softly, her heart light. Claire motioned for Maria to join her at a small table near the window. "Good morning," Claire said, handing Maria a cup of coffee. The aroma filled Maria's senses. She took a careful sip. "Thank you," she whispered. Claire leaned forward. "I asked the kitchen to prepare a special breakfast today," she said. "I want us to start a new tradition community breakfast." Maria raised her eyebrows. "Community breakfast?" Claire nodded. "Once a month, we'll invite anyone who needs a hot meal at no cost. Hungry children, elderly, on fixed incomes, anyone who could use a hand." Maria's heart fluttered. "That's wonderful," she said. "They'll feel welcome." Claire smiled. "And I want you to help organize it." Maria's face brightened. "I would love that." Together they made quick plans. Select a Saturday, spread the word at the shelter, post notices in the neighborhood. Prepare simple dishes like oatmeal, toast, fresh fruit, and hot tea. Maria felt excitement bubble inside her. She jotted notes on a scrap of paper and tucked it into her pocket. The morning rush arrived, and Maria stood near the register, guiding new staff and welcoming guests. She reminded the cooks to keep extra soup warm in the thermal pots. She checked with the dishwasher about clean plates for lunchtime. She found Tina, who now worked part-time, and shared a quick hug. Tina smiled. "It looks like you're running the place," she said. Maria laughed. "I'm getting there." Tina's eyes shone with pride for her friend. Just before noon, the diner's door opened, and a small boy peeked inside. Maria's heart skipped a beat. Was the same boy who had wandered in days before. He stood at the threshold, hesitating. His clothes still looked a bit worn, but his eyes held hope. Maria knelt beside him. "Good afternoon," she said gently. "Would you like something to eat?" He nodded shyly. Maria stood and led him. "To a table?" she whispered to a server. "Bring him a meal on the house, please." The server nodded and hurried away. The boy sat and watched Maria as she moved among the tables. His little chest rose and fell with anticipation. When the server brought a tray of food, the boy's eyes widened in delight, looked up at Maria and mouthed, "Thank you." Maria smiled and gave him a thumbs up. Then she turned to continue her work, her heart warmed by the boy's gratitude. That afternoon, the phone at the front desk rang. Maria answered it. On the other end was the social worker from the community center. "Good afternoon," the woman said. "I heard about your community breakfast. We have families who need help. Can we bring them by?" Maria's voice brightened. "Absolutely," she said. "We'll be ready for you." She hung up and relayed the news to Claire, who grinned. "This is exactly what we hoped for," Claire said. As evening approached, the last of the guests left full and content. Maria stood near the door, shaking hands with volunteers and neighbors who had come to serve. Someone handed her a small bouquet of wildflowers picked from a nearby field. "For you," the woman said. Maria accepted it, surprised and touched. She carried the bouquet to the office and placed it in a jar of water on her desk. The colors yellow daisies, purple clover, white Queen Anne's lace reminded her of home. When the diner was quiet again, Maria and Claire sat in the office, sipping hot tea. Claire leaned back in her chair. "You did well today," she said. Maria shook her head. "We did," she corrected. The whole team came together. Claire's eyes shone with admiration. "I'm proud of you." Maria felt her eyes well with tears of joy. "Thank you," she said softly, "for believing in me." That night, as Maria walked home, the city lights twinkled around her. She carried the same wildflowers, now wrapped in paper, for her mother. At Mrs. Patel's door, she saw Leo waving from the window. Maria opened the door, and Leo ran into her arms. "Mama, look at these," he exclaimed, pointing at the flowers. Maria smiled. "For Grandma," she said, ruffling his hair. They walked home together. Inside their apartment, Maria placed the flowers in a small vase on the table. Her mother sat propped by pillows, reading a magazine. When she looked up and saw the flowers, her face lit with surprise. "They're beautiful," she said. Maria sat beside her and took her hand. "They're from the diner," she said. "A friend gave them to me." Her mother squeezed her hand. Maria poured a cup of tea for her mother and passed it to her. "How was your day?" her mother asked. Maria smiled widely. "It was the best day I've had in a long time." After dinner, Maria tucked Leo into bed. He lay under the covers. With the light on, eyes heavy with sleep, "Good night, Mama," he murmured. Maria kissed his forehead. "Good night, my love." She turned off the light and tiptoed to her own room. She sat on the edge of her bed, thinking of the week behind Hertha firing, the worry, the hope, and now the joy. She felt gratitude for every step that had led her here. Before sleep found her, Maria took out her notebook and wrote a note at the top of a fresh page. "Acts of kindness change lives." She drew a small heart beside it. Then she closed the notebook, placed it on her bedside table, and lay down. She closed her eyes and let the day's warmth carry her into dreams. In her dreams, she saw the diner filled with happy faces, the small boy laughing as he ate pancakes, her family sitting around a table sharing a meal, and Claire standing by her side, smiling. A soft glow filled the room, a glow of hope and kindness, of compassion and community. Maria drifted deeper into sleep, her heart full and her spirit at peace, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring.